All right, everyone, here we are once again. Selway's Techno Saturdays. Welcome back. Actually, I should call it Electro Saturday when I have people like our guest today and, when we had Sync 24 on. But hey, for me, techno, electro, I love it all. I think we can all get along. So, yeah, here we are, 343 TV. We're here literally almost every day. And this is my day. I love it. It's one of the highlights of my week. Glad to see a lot of regulars back in the chat here. William Mindreaders was on like more than 100 minutes ago. He was ready. Paul Vanderwerf, nice to have you here. What's up, Kai? And of course, our guest today, you can see right here, is in the chat. Hit him up, say hello. Hi, Mac. Say Simple Sam. Welcome back. Lie Society, Billboard Shah. And again, Daniel from Intelligel. Glad to have you here. Getting some nice people in. All of you are nice. What am I saying? So it's Techno Friends today, which means it's basically a hangout and talk, listen to music, see where the conversation takes us. Not giving any production lessons or overviews or sound design tutorials, just, enjoying ourselves and having fun and having a nice conversation. So, with that in mind, without further ado, let's just bring Keith right in and just keep him in the loop from the beginning. So,
hello.
Hey, Keith, nice to see you again.
How are you doing?
I'm great. I feel good. I always have this little rush of like adrenaline / anxiety, or even though I love doing this, I look forward to it. But there's a little bit of a tightrope walk, as you know, with the technical stuff.
Yeah,
and things can go wrong. It almost happened again. I didn't want to say anything, but I'm saying it anyway. Like, it's tricky, the streaming stuff. You got all the I's have to be dotted and the T's have to be crossed, or else you lose control. And our restream setup started to stream to the wrong YouTube event. And we caught it just in time. We stopped. We changed the destination and started again. And now all of our viewers can see us the way they're supposed to and not have to run around to find us, which is very much of a relief. Yeah, everything's great.
It's become a long way from Morse code, though, right?
Indeed. Or even, just using a fax machine, right? Like, forget telegrams.
Yeah.
Here we are. You're in England.
And also,
I'm in New York.
You can take that for granted. It's like, why isn't it working? It's like, well, come on. It's like, there's pretty serious technology going on here,
Yeah, just imagine we were on like satellite internet connections. Like, it's mind-blowing sometimes. Yeah. Simple Sam says, hooray, it works with sound. The Radioactive Man didn't blow up our system this time.
I do have my finger on the button, the green button.
Nice. Yeah, just in case. You want to be ready. You have to make it your escape. Radioactive Man is kind of like a superhero name, isn't it?
Yeah, I stole it. I did steal it from The Simpsons. I wonder if I should say that.
No. Yeah, I recall. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, but I just thought at the time, it really suited the music, and
still does.
It was a bit of a cheeky steal, to be honest with you. In fact, I've got a comic up here somewhere.
Yeah, go find that comic. And while you do that, I'll remind everyone that 343 TV is brought to you by 34 Labs Music Production School. There it is, Radioactive Man. That's awesome. That's a nice thing to have in your collection.
Yeah. I stole it unashamedly, and I still have it until I get a call from Matt Groening saying, "What the fuck are you doing?"
I don't think he minds. That's a pretty generic enough, like Radioactive Man. Like that's the hard thing to trademark, I would think. No.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, he probably stole it anyway. So.
Yeah, maybe it's some old comic book from the 50s or something. You never know. So yeah, excellent. Let's check up on the chat here. Yeah, so 343 Labs has posted our contest, our giveaway that we do every week here. This time, we've been hooking up with Isotope now, and we have their Nectar vocal processing plugin available, it's quite powerful. You can, it's pretty much, if you want to just have one thing to do your vocal channel, this could do all you need. And even I've used it before. I working with a band, a friend of mine, actually my wife's relative has a really cool band, and I helped them do some mixing, and they used Nectar for all their vocals, and it was a treat. It was like even the presets were like a good starting point. Like there were so many good setups, good signal chains to choose from, and you could go in there and get into the details. And so, yeah, that's what we're giving away. This is your chance to, join if you haven't already. Sign up for the giveaway, and we'll be announcing the winner towards the end of the show. It'll be here in the chat, and I'll give a shout out the winner on the stream here as well. So take a look at that. As always, check out our links below if you're interested in knowing more about what 343 Labs is doing, what we're up to, events we have, classes we're starting. We have a Discord channel you can join and get involved with, submit tracks for feedback. We just had a beat battle recently, so we do those kind of things regularly, and you can win, prizes, software, things like that, sometimes even hardware. I think we gave away a Novation controller at one point, if I have the brand right. And, we just trying to get people involved in what we're doing, share our knowledge. And that is why we are here almost every day. And why, I love, I've been having more and more guests on my stream lately, and having Keith here is a real honor. So I'm really glad that you're joining in as well.
Thanks, man.
So
I'm a big fan and big Selway fan since back in the day.
It means a lot to me, because I can say the same to you. Like, I've been listening to and playing your tracks and your stuff with Two Lone Swordsman, with Andrew Weatherhall, like for ages. So yeah, you're definitely a big influence on me as well. So thanks very much.
Yeah, I mean the Serotonin labels. I mean, even still, I'll still play those tracks from back in the day, like the Synapse, as you would say.
Synapse is fine too.
Yeah, some killer tracks, and again, I was really happy to see that label starting again.
Yeah, we've never been super like business savvy, build up our label into something big kind of thing. We always just sort of put out records when we felt like we wanted to put out records, and we started and stopped. Yeah, we started in the 90s, as you know, and then got up to about, I think our last release was literally in the first run when we started was 1999.
Okay.
Let's see if anyone, all right, you might know what that record was if you know our catalog well enough. I don't know how many of our viewers out there will know, but do you remember what our last, our was going to be our last release, but then we started again in 1999, what that might be?
Did it have like a paper insert? Was it like a...
Oh, that's right before that. That we did a compilation with, there was a poster. That was Regenerate. Yeah. That was fun. That was a good one. We had Lakar and Cybeg and Bug Orchestra, Fabrice Lig, otherwise known as Fabrice Lig, and Solvent was on there, I think, if I recall. And I did a track with Dom Bentley from Freaky Chakra called Invent, which is really dark and twisted. It's probably like the darkest thing, one of the darkest things I've ever done, and certainly he's ever done. And do you know that guy? The Freaky Chakra?
I just remember that record being pretty dark, yeah.
Yeah, cool. And then, but right after that one, I think might have been our last 12-inch, which was actually the first appearance of Fisher Spooner on vinyl, as far as I know.
That's right. Yeah, Emerge. Was it Emerge as well?
Exactly.
Wasn't it? Wow. Yeah, I forgot about that. Then that blew up big style, didn't it?
Yeah, we were one of the stepping stones for them. It was like, and I remember I met them. I saw them play live at the Limelight here in New York at this art festival after party, and I like, these guys have to put a record out, because it was like, it was synthesizer, synth pop, new wave, electro all together with this amazing performance that they did, and I just was like, I want to put out their record, and could somehow convince them to say yes, because they had this whole big, art group of people. It was a huge project with a lot of people, and then we had a meeting once we went out to this restaurant and had some drinks, and I was like, so you can put out a record on our label, and then that'll get into the hands of like some DJs that play this kind of stuff, and then from there you might go to another label in Europe, and we can do licensing deals, and we just kind of thought about a whole plan for them, and it ended up coming true. Like, it wasn't even like we were strategizing. It just, we talked about the possibilities, and then that's what they did. It was really amazing to see that all go forward.
So did you license it as well then? Just like
That's the sad side of the story. They were smart enough not to sign that kind of a deal with a small label that didn't have a lot of resources. They had the right to just go on, which is fine because I loved having the opportunity to put that out. And it was good. It was good for us in the short term, maybe not in the long term, but it was good for us at that moment to do it.
Yeah, I remember that exploded, that record.
Yeah, it was fun. Someone in here, what did they say? Whatever happened to Cybeg? He's still around.
Cy is doing a lot of TV and film work, as far as I know.
Yeah, and I remember he was asking some artists to do remixes of some of his stuff, some of his cinematic stuff. Yeah. And my partner in Serotonin, Jason Sostek, he did one or two kind of ambient remixes for Cy like a couple years ago. So I know he's still around doing stuff and doing well, I should think. Yeah,
I used to love the Noodles compilations that came
out. Oh, totally.
Lots of fun releases, all sorts of wacky stuff, really good.
Definitely. We should let's listen to some music. We're talking about music. Yeah. I've got some tracks from you kind of ready to play here. And we can, listen to it in the background a little bit. So this one I've got queued up here is a track from Two Lone Swordsmen, which is you and the late, great Andrew Weatherall. How's that sound, everyone? Good level? Hear me talking over it? How's that sound for you, Keith?
That's good.
All right. Yeah, we were listening to this before, and there's a sound in it that I really like. I mean, the whole vibe of the track is good.
So this is Brutal. It's called Brutal.
Right. Spelled with 2 O's and an LE. BROOTLE, Brutal, looks a lot cuter than BRUTAL.
Yeah.
It's like a little slightly less aggressive when it's spelled that way.
Andrew used to always do that with like putting different spellings on things.
So you just heard that little lead sound come in.
Yeah.
Right there. Which I think it's such an odd in a good way kind of a sound. It just catches your ear right away.
Yeah.
And you told me how you made that.
Yeah, so that's oh god, I can't really hear myself with my headphones.
Oh, sorry about that. We can turn it down a little.
That's all right. So it's a guitar.
It's a guitar, which I think is
and also the sound that's coming in behind that is also a guitar.
The kind of slidey chords in the background.
Yeah. So it's all the guitars put through pitch shifting at times.
Oh, okay. So I was wondering if you used like one of those little slides to play up and down on the fretboard. You know what I'm talking about?
Right.
Like the Blue Skies play to do the sliding.
Oh right, yeah. No, it was just through. It had an Sonic DP2, I think, was through.
Oh, those sonic effects are great.
Yeah. And there was quite a lot of guitar on a lot of our stuff that didn't sound like a guitar, It's a nice way to come up with different sounds in it, and kind of loose as well.
Well, that's one of the things I've always appreciated about your stuff and stuff you did with Andrew is that there was it's kind of electro, it's funk, there are breaks. Of course, you did some sort of more straight techno stuff as well. Lots of different styles from you guys. But there was always this kind of playful experimentation with sounds. And, it's got a different flavor. Especially if we're just looking at electro. Your electro doesn't sound like a lot of other electro. And this is why. You don't usually think of, guitar plucks and things like that with electro.
And I think live bass or, that's how I learned. I was a guitar player, so I used to, pick up guitar and make it sound slightly different and tune it down, or I just think it's quite a nice way to come up with some unique sounds.
Well, guitars and effects. You were showing me a new effects pedal you got.
Yeah, I just got what is it? This just makes your guitar sound into an orchestra and sounds like a sort of mellotron,
okay,
it's based on mellotron, yeah.
Move it over a little bit towards the center, because you're cropped here. Nice.
Yeah.
So it takes an audio input, and then tracks it, and then kind of uses that to control a sound. right?
Yeah, it's like, and you can set the attack and you can set the dry and wet. It's got like orchestra, cello, strings, flutes. And I don't know how it's done because you'd think it's like samples or something, but it's just amazing.
Well, it might be samples. I mean, I already know you can build a circuit to do pitch tracking. And, you know, you can detect when there's a transient to start a note, and then that triggers a sampler or a synthesizer to play, and then the pitch tracking controls the frequency of what the oscillator is doing or what pitch the sample is playing. There must be something like that going on in that pedal.
Yeah, and I sort of, you know, I'm not a great keyboard player in terms of chords and changing chords and stuff, so what I might do is like record, say if I was using that, I used it the other day, and I'd record a load of different chords and then put them on the MPC and have lots of chords at my fingertips. So
that's great.
I'm not a great keyboard player, you know. And then you can turn those into stabs and, you know. Nice.
True. You probably do a lot of do you do a lot of kind of just playing around with sounds, recording them and then sampling them and playing around?
Yeah, I do a lot of sampling. Yeah.
And I think that's definitely really important. Like, a lot of people are using hardware now, or even if they're just using synths in their DAW, like you're always thinking about like playing your keyboard or triggering with the pad, and like how it's a different way of thinking about making sounds. And when you're tweaking the knobs on the synth, for example, but then when you are not concerned about writing a melody or a bass line or a drum rhythm, and you're just fooling around with noises, and then that workflow of like just making crazy stuff and committing that to audio and then going back and being creative with it, that's always a good workflow to come up with new stuff.
Yeah, and I always like this sort of randomness of samples as well, like, you know, whether it's on a record or whether it's like, you know, especially from a record, when Andrew used to just have, he'd buy a lot of weird, you know, records just for that purpose, to sample, you know. So he would like, we had a little sampler on our DJ mixer in the studio, like a crappy little, it was like a Denon thing or something like that, you know. But it was great for like getting ideas. So he was using the records like an instrument, you know, and he would like sample stuff, see if it works, and then we would sample it properly into the Akai sampler and
nice
try stuff like that, you know. I like the randomness, and I like the sort of, you know, coming up with stuff that you wouldn't be able to do or you wouldn't come up with, and maybe it's a bit out of tune with the track, and, you know.
Yeah, I don't mind that.
Yeah, but sometimes it works, you know.
Exactly. I'm just putting on another one of your, this is a newer thing. It's a remix of yours.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about what's going on here.
Okay, so this is a remix of my friend Luca Cazal. It was like a sort of techno house track originally. All of those stabs, I can't remember. But I've recently got, not kind of recently, like just before COVID hit, I bought myself a 303, like a proper one.
The real deal.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was just sort of like, I was like, I had one and I sold it, and like in the early 2000s for like, you know, I paid like 3 times what I sold it for this new one. Well, I've been really into that. I'm using that with like CV gate to the 101. So I've always had a 101.
Oh, that was always a killer combo. The 303 as the sequencer for another synth, and having them work together. So great.
Yeah, because you can get all the slides from this 303, and you know, and when you run them together as well, even if you just had like a subby sound from the 101, it underlies the 303 sound, you know, there's that problem. So if you turn up the resonance on a 303, you lose all the bass. You know what I mean? All the sub bass goes out.
Right, exactly.
So you just leave the 101 ticking under with some sub, and you don't lose all that. You can do that, you know.
Good advice.
You know, maybe pan them as well, and you got a nice stereo thing going on.
I used to like to do a thing with the 101 where I would, because you know, you could have the 101 going and you could transpose it in real time.
Yeah.
And actually the same thing with the 303. You could have the pattern playing and then go into that little pitch mode and then hit a different note, and it would transpose the pattern up or down by a number of semitones. and doing harmonies between the 101 and the 303. So you're hearing,
Right.
hearing it's like two voice polyphony, and it sounds so cool.
So you do like fifths or
Yeah.
sevenths, or
That always worked really well.
Yeah.
Or
So
like,
I've been using that a lot, like coming up with bass lines just from those two, really.
it sounds like this one has a 101 in it.
Yeah. So
the lower-
that's exactly what's going on here. It's all
And you got the
303.
glide really slow. So it's bendy.
Yeah. So you could have, both patterns playing, but then maybe turn the glide on just so it's slightly biting.
Yeah.
And it's slightly turning. I love that. I've always loved that sound.
There's a comment in here from Bob Bell who says he saw you at the Attic in Manchester for Computer Controlled, and the bouncer was a not so nice
twat.
guy. Yeah. And
kicked me
kicked
off
you
at the
off. Right. That's happened to me.
I think that's fairly common. Yeah.
No, when I was younger, this is got to be more in the 90s. There was some rave in a warehouse, and the private security that had been hired decided that because their contract was at the end, it had to put specific hour on the contract. So their manager was just like, "Okay, cut it, party's over," and they just shut it down with no warning. They didn't talk to the promoter. They didn't talk to anybody. They just said, "Okay, everybody out. We have to go home."
Yeah.
And I was like, hell no. I would not stop playing. I literally, I've never told this story in public before, but two of them had to physically remove me because I was so like, I'm going to fight because I know that they contracted this venue until a certain time and I'm going to do the job I was brought here to do. And like everybody in the party was like, yay, because they saw what was going on. But then I couldn't. Obviously, I was going to get hurt if I really.
Yeah, and also, like you'd have your last tunes you want to play.
Yeah, it's so disappointing.
Crescendos.
What would you have played if, like, do you remember? Like, what would you have ended your set with, do you think? What's a good ending track?
What's a good ending track? Well, sometimes I would just switch and just play a jungle track or something like that. It just drives everyone crazy. I might play like a whole set of electro and breaks or sort of something like that, and then drop some jungle right as the last track. And
that's a good move. Something like that changes the vibe and hypes up the energy in a new way. That's a good move.
And then everyone doesn't want to go home at all.
Of course, yeah. You just like you're starting a new set and everyone's just getting going, and then okay, bye.
Yeah, but also go the other way and play something really like deep and maybe
that's
stringy,
easier. That's the signal that okay, we're done. Good vibes.
Yeah.
Have a nice drive home. Be safe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Enjoy the after party.
But 9 times out of 10, I'd be too tempted to play some jungle or something.
That's good. That just gets putting on a total rocker at the very end and leaving one more. That's always a good move. So there's a question here from one of our regulars, William Mindreader, and this is as someone who's been around, who has an established career, who's been gigging and making money from gigs and so on. Obviously, everything's totally different now in our current circumstances. We don't have all the gigs. We're not traveling the same way. So, what do you think about the opportunities for? And I'm paraphrasing a lot here. What do you think about opportunities for new artists, younger artists that are trying to get into it now? Like, where do we go? What do they do under the circumstances? And how do you feel about the situation?
I mean, it's completely like saturated, isn't it? Now it's like everyone's like, my entire feed is full of people with headphones on playing records, and like it's like. It's just that I find it a little bit overbearing. It's in your face all the time. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, I wouldn't try. If I was young and coming through it now, I wouldn't try and compete with that. I would just I would get into production, making records and making tunes.
Gigging is, right now is largely online. There's like an explosion of streaming, of course, which is, look what I'm doing. I'm not playing gigs out there.
Well, this is slightly different, but, I don't know. I find it a little bit like over the top. Everything like, here's another person playing records. It's like, okay. Well.
Like, do we need more DJs?
No, we don't. We need more artists.
What about live performance? I mean, there's a lot more live acts now than there ever were. Even before, COVID, there were a lot more, events and festivals featuring a larger number of live acts and proper live acts in addition to the DJs.
Yeah, I mean, I just find it a bit more interesting to see people do live sets, personally.
Yeah, that makes sense. You're seeing there's something, assuming that they're really doing it and not totally basing everything off backing tracks.
Yeah.
You're seeing something spontaneous. You're seeing, something's happening in the moment. They have the how much an artist responds to the crowd or not depends on that person. Some people just, I'm doing what's in my mind and you follow along, and others are actually like reading the crowd like a DJ and trying to change their music for the moment, which is also, it's hard to do that. That's the biggest challenge, I think, as a performer, is to like be able to create in the moment spontaneously and like respond in real time to a group of people. How do you feel about that? I know you've done live sets before.
Yeah, I mean, I most of my pre-COVID, most of my bookings were to do live things,
Right.
Like, I mean, which I was happy to do, but I think like I was still doing DJ stuff as DJ gigs as well, and I think that kind of broke it up for me a little bit, because if you're doing live stuff, you have to like keep updating your live set just for yourself.
Sure.
Because you
might get a little tired.
Well, yeah, that's just the same as DJing. You're not going to play the same set every time. I mean, you need to kind of keep exploring, and so I like to do both. I still like to do both, but I still love. I think that playing live has the edge.
Yeah, I agree. It's fun. I mean, I'm not an expert at performing live. I've only done it a little bit, and I haven't done it solo. Well, no, that's not true. I did for a little bit. I want to say like almost 15 years ago now. Gosh.
Yeah.
But it is a whole different game than just showing up with a bunch of other people's music. Not to knock that. I love DJing too. It's just different.
Yeah.
We've got another.
I kind of like it when things are on the edge as well. As things can go wrong, and that's part of the live set. I used to get really like pissed off if I made a mistake in my live set. I'd be pissed off for weeks afterwards.
Oh no.
And then after whiles of doing it, you're just kind of like, well, this is going to happen. This is what life is about. It should be rough and raw, and it should feel like it's going to fall apart at any minute.
I like that. Again, the tightrope walking. Like, things could go terribly wrong, but in that moment, things could also go incredibly right. That's exciting.
Exactly. Yeah.
We got a nice question here from Daniel from IntelliGel. Once you have your sounds ready, sitting down to make a track, what's your typical process? How long does it take you? And this, we already talked about getting into some of this stuff, so this is great. Are you jamming out a lot in real time, or is it block by block?
Yeah, I am using MPCs, so I jam a lot. I jam it a lot more. I kind of stopped using computers years back. I just found it a bit more engaging to use MPCs. You're not looking at a screen, and it's just more about like moving things in and out, see what works with other things, and then it's a little bit like a long way round in a way, but
it can be. It isn't always. It depends on your workflow, right?
I think the end result is a bit more spontaneous sounding, and like things like simple things like like hats coming in just before the bar, things like that you do intuitively when you're doing.
Well, if you're that implies to me that you're using a mixer as an arrangement tool, as you would in a live set, where you're bringing things in on the fly.
Well, that or the way the MPC's laid out, so you can you can mute all the tracks on the pads.
Same idea.
Yeah, exactly. So
we're listening to. Sorry, go ahead.
Go on. So I generally do that, but the problem with the MPCs is that they don't have enough outputs. So it would be really nice. I mean, the 3000 has like 10 outputs.
Well, I was just wondering, the older ones don't, but there might be some newer MPCs that are more complex that do have.
Well, no, it's the other way around. Like the older ones have got 10 outputs, and the new ones, the 1000 have got 6 outputs.
This shows what I know. You know, I don't use that hardware. If I've forgotten about that.
You know, even like the Octatrack or something like that. I think they've only got like four outputs or something, which I feel that is a little bit let down in the new kit because you know, certainly for that purpose, if you're like jamming stuff out, the more outputs the better. You know, like an 808 for example had like 14 outputs or something stupid like.
Yeah, like all the drums plus a stereo mix.
Right, and that's such an amazing thing, you know. So you can come back to it. So you don't have to worry about getting the levels right. Record it all into your DAW.
Well, at least
that's what
in
I
the
love
case
doing,
of Electron stuff, they have overbridge. You know, at how well that works with your computer or not is one part of the story. But at least you can digitally do that in some cases with some new hardware. Right.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. But
I kind of like that model, being an mainly in the box producer. If I do have some hardware that's got digital audio connections, that's great. It's great that I can do that and not have to worry about a huge mess of cables all over the desk.
Yeah. I mean, I just love having been able to separate everything. You know, so what I do is like have to work with the 6 outputs, and I'll just like track it back the next. So I'll do this first 6. And the next 6, you know what I mean? Like I say, it's a long way around, you know. But
somebody asked, I think this must be an MPC specific question. Are you familiar with JJOS?
Yes, JJOS. Yes, I do. JJOS was made by a Japanese kid who he coded his own operating systems for the MPCs.
Right.
And he kept on releasing, updating them, you know, and so everyone's different. So I've got a couple of MPCs, and I use 2 different operating systems on each one because one will do this and one will do another function, you know.
That makes sense. You're kind of layering them up, giving them different priority.
Like certain things. So it's one of them will work like, for example, you can chop things up into 16 bits very easily or something like that, or you know. So yeah, the JJOS is they're really clever. They're really the guy who did it is seriously clever.
Nice. I've been playing some music in the background all this time. This is one of your own solo tracks here.
This is coming out in 2 weeks, actually.
Nice.
Yes. This is a track called Unsaid. It's kind of like delving into my love of drum and bass and jungle a little bit.
Well, we were talking about that a little bit earlier about, you know, electro and synthetic sounds and synthetic drums, as well as breaks, funk, organic sounds. And I think this is a track that definitely shows the balance there. There's a little drum and bass influence. There's the electro beat. There's the funk element.
I mean, so it's still like 140, you know, it's still not drum and bass tempo, but it's kind of like maybe delving into some of those sounds. And
it definitely has a little bit of a UK bass halftime roll to it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Got a dub kind of bass rhythm.
I mean, I used to get some of those drum and bass records back in the day, and not all of them worked, but you could play the 45 cuts on 33.
Good idea.
Up to +8.
Nice.
And they would just about work at that kind of tempo, you know.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, in a way, it's a lot of especially in the early days, drum and bass beats were slow beats sped up a lot. So when you slow them down, they're back down where they were supposed to be in the first place, and they have a little bit more thickness to them.
Yeah.
But then the flip side of that is the bass lines, the drum and bass deep subby bass lines are too low, and you lose the bottom end a little bit. It kind of goes below the cutoff. And the system can't reproduce the fundamental of that bass as well.
Yeah, and they were quite hard to mix as well because things are a bit weird when they're slowed down, aren't they? A bit
That's true too. That what felt tight at 160, 170 beats per minute doesn't. It's a little looser feeling at 140, 130.
Yeah. Strange. Like, there's that thing called half-speed mastering. Do you know about that?
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So that is, because I've been doing mastering for quite a few years. Is when you cut it, you play the track back at half speed, and the lathe is running at half speed, but it's cutting more detail into the to the assets into the lacquer because
you're giving more time and space for the cutting needle to etch, and so it's capturing more detail.
Exactly. So then when you speed it up again, it's more detailed and it's more definition and stuff like that.
And maybe, is there more dynamic range possibly?
Yeah, I think so.
And lower noise probably.
And it's really expensive to do because obviously it takes twice as long.
Right. More hours for the mastering engineer.
Yeah, and you have to sit and listen to a track on the wrong speed.
Well, how do you EQ? I guess you get used to it. Like if you're EQing at that low frequency, your EQ settings are going to be correct when they're transposed up at the same time.
I guess so. You know, I've never done it, but it's one of those things like they'll do at Abbey Road or something like that. You know,
should try it one day as an experiment. Andy B says this track sounds awesome. Nice compliment for you there.
Thank you, Andy B. Thank you.
And this is sort of related to what we were talking about. Subsect asks, where does the difference lie between breaks and electro? It's hard to tell sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one because for me, like, when I hear a breakbeat sampled, like, for me personally, I don't want to hear it, like, particularly quantized and, like, do you know what I mean? For me, if I hear a breakbeat, I like the groove of the breakbeat. That's why Jungle Records, the Amen was great.
Yeah.
What we're hearing now was great because it's from a funk record. So it's like, it's got all the groove of that funk. You know what I mean? So it's not, this break in particular is like, works. You don't have to quantize.
Yeah.
You don't have to quantize it because it's just one of those, it's just a perfect break in my opinion. But
a lot of people would agree with you.
But, you know, but then on the other hand, with electro, I like it really rigid. Do you know what I mean? So So it's a weird one. So
some of it is like vibe and attitude as much as it is the sounds.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, you know, I like to have that looseness of a breakbeat, but I also like the rigidity. Is that the right word?
Rigidity
of a drum machine, you know. But you know, I mean, the 808, for example, like that is also, you know, you can use samples and you can use your MPC or whatever. But when you have an 808 just doing its thing internally, it's got its own groove completely. And I really love that.
The imperfections of this analog clock. It drifts a little bit.
Maybe it doesn't drift. It just got its own groove. You know what I mean? It's just slightly. I love that groove. It's like the MPC 3000. It has its own groove. And
there's a reason. Like if you're in the box producer and using Live has this whole groove engine, and you can, like I could take an MPC or any piece of hardware that you know, drum machine or with a clock, and then capture a rhythm played in that machine, and then apply that timing to a groove in Live, and then you look at the MIDI of it, and you can see like, okay, these notes on the grid are a little earlier, and these other notes are a little bit later.
Right.
When you play the drum machine, you think it's quantized perfectly, but actually no, they have a groove in the way that their sequencer is working.
Yeah.
So,
and I like that in, like, when you hook up machines together, and you know, maybe they're just not quite, they're doing their own little thing. You know what I mean? And you can tell that in old UR records and stuff, when it's not really like what we know now as like completely quantized tight.
Oh, sure.
It's slightly loose and that's, I think that's more interesting, you know.
I can't think of the track, but I think it's one of the Red Planet releases, but there's kind of one of their Acid 303 electro tracks where I don't even think the 303 is quantized. It's not in sync with the drums. It's just going and it just floats in and out of time with the drums, and it's amazing. So we don't always have to actually have everything quantized. It can be really interesting.
Right.
that
But you
way.
can still like, so you can still, so what you were saying, you can take a groove from like a breakbeat, you know, so you can, what I did on a track from my last album was I took the breakbeat, it's a particular breakbeat worked really well. So you don't quantize it, it just loops really well. And then you chop it into 16 bits, but you don't hit quantize. And then when you copy it over, then you just start moving all the bits around, you know, and it keeps the groove of the breakbeat, and but it's not like quantizing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't work on every break or something like that. You might have to move the snares a bit or something like that. But
yeah, it depends on the timing of that particular beat, how well that works.
It's a really nice way of working, I think.
Paul Hierophant says it don't
Paul.
mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. Is that someone you know?
Yes. How are you, mate? Nice to see you here. You know, and I think like, yeah, groove is really important, you know, not to just automatically quantize everything you do.
Exactly. Subsect says was using maybe on the example I'm thinking of, a Pro 1 sequencer running free, so like not clocked with the drums. Hey, Subsect, if you can remember which track that is, it's driving me nuts. So put the track name in there in the chat if you think of it. Let's check out another track. So that was Unsaid. That's unreleased. It's coming out soon on your label, Asking for Trouble.
That's right.
Nice.
And the reason I called it Asking for Trouble is because when I had a label before, it was Control Tower. Everyone went. I don't know if you remember in the 2000s, lots of distributors went bust, and we ended up having a lot of money owed to us.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, I'm not doing that again. So, but then when I did think it was the right time to do it again, I wanted a name for it, and I was like, well, it's Asking for Trouble, isn't it, really? So
it's true. And starting a label can be a great big risk, although less so now, I would say, because you've got things like Bandcamp, and it's easy to digitally distribute your music globally in an instant. You can be on Spotify just like right away. That isn't always a good idea because you're lost in a sea of releases and no one knows you're there. So you have to set things up ahead of time. So the risk is really more on the how do you market yourself and get the word out and build up your fan base and connect with people. Or at least that's people spend money on that. Right.
I mean, you know, thank God for Bandcamp. I mean, it's helped a lot of artists, and you know, it's like, you know, I mean, everything's stacked against us now, isn't it? I mean, in terms of like streaming, no one gets nothing. You know what I mean? Like
the fractions of pennies.
I had 30,000 streams on. I don't think it was anything in particular. I think it was 30,000 streams, and I got a statement, and I think it was under £100 anyway.
It's really, you have to be in the millions. You know what I mean? You have to have millions and millions of streams to make a decent amount of money.
Yeah.
So it's totally lopsided.
You know, and it's something that I feel is very wrong in the industry. You know, it's like, I think Spotify's a great platform. I think it's amazing. I think
for discovery and sharing, right?
Right. But, you know, how did I don't understand how they get away with it. It's like, how were that, when these rules were written, who wrote them? You know what I mean? Like, why can't we change it?
They whatever the rules are were kind of, you know, written in for those that were lobbying for them. Like anyway, that's a whole nother story we could get into.
Exactly. But I think, you know, the positives of Bandcamp are amazing.
Right. Direct to the people that care about you the most. And they're not, you know, Bandcamp isn't a royalty situation. They're not collecting and calculating fractions of downloads or streams, and then having all that money get sifted through all the publishing rights organizations before it gets to you. They're just they're like a web shop. You're paying them a fee to host your music and sell your music, and all the rest, they take their little cut for doing that work, and then all the rest, and they don't own a thing. So it's like it's really that kind of the ideal setup when you're talking about selling your music directly to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Someone said, I just want to acknowledge one of the chat comments, Rabasotho. I will give anything for a tutorial video on polymeter and polyrhythm. And I believe on one of our Music Theory Thursdays with Max Wild, he did cover that very subject. So take a look at our YouTube page and, you can maybe try looking up Max Wild and polymeter or something like that. When you search, you should find it. So, yeah.
There was a good function in Cubase actually that I used to use for that. So say if you had like an arpeggio, you could go inside the edit box and then maybe loop 5 steps of a bar, but the rest of the track would be playing over. I'm sure you can do that in Ableton, and I can sometimes do that on a 303. So program it just to do 5 notes. So it's like da-ga-da-dum, 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 and then the rest of the track is going over in 4/4, and that's a nice way.
I think we would call that polymeter. You're not playing different. You're not counting the clock differently from one part to another. It's the same timing. You're just resetting the pattern sooner. It's not, instead of 16 steps of 16 notes in a 4/4 bar, you're counting 5 of those 16. So it's a different way of subdividing the meter.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really like, again, a lot of the UR stuff.
A lot of techno and acid and electro in general. All of it. Yeah. It's just a perpetual part of the style.
And it kind of adds to that, like, what would you say? So it adds to kind of like,
this one's polymetric.
Confusion when you're in a club.
Sure, it definitely makes you feel a little dizzy,
Yeah.
This is another nice remix of yours with some breaks. Yeah, another fusion of breaks and electro.
The recent one.
Raven Jonassen? Or is that the name of the artist?
Raven Jonassen.
Jonassen. I got that totally wrong.
He's from Berlin, and the label's called Burial Soil. It's fairly recent. It came out in the last few weeks, I think.
Nice. The deep and low.
So this took a classic James Brown break.
Which one?
So it's like the long version of Funky Drummer. I can't remember what that's called. Do you know what I mean?
I don't recall the name.
It's called Soul something. I forget what it's called, but it's a really long drum break.
A lot of fills.
Yeah, it's one of those. And so I tightened it. It's almost like gated. I really love that, doing that in breakbeats, where you're just getting the first little bit, So it almost sounds like a drum machine in a way, you know what I mean? But you're using that groove again.
I mean, that drummer was so tight. I mean, it sounds like he's quantized.
Yeah.
And if you do time correction on it, it doesn't do that much. Just a little bit, right?
There's Clive Stubblefield.
That sounds right.
I think he had 2 drummers, didn't he?
But that's the name. I think that's the most famous name of his drummers.
He did Funky Drummer, didn't he? Yeah.
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 There it is.
There's the Funky Drummer.
Right on cue. Good one.
So, I do like using these classic breaks, as well as like trying to experiment and find some other ones. But it's like when you're trying to find a snare sound and you go through loads of snares and you'll just go, you know what? I'm going to go back to the 808.
That happens to me all the time. Like, there's just the bread and butter sounds that always work. And it's a challenge to find new ones that make you satisfied, that work as easily or work as well with your style of music. One thing about breaks that I think I see a lot of, for modern drum and bass and break beats, a lot of producers are using these kind of new plugins like Addictive Drums that do really detailed drum kit recreation.
Drums,
and then you can just make this whole crazy processed acoustic drum kit, make really, very natural sounding grooves, and then sample them and chop them. And it's like new breaks that sound like classic breaks.
It's fantastic, that program. I've used it a lot. It's really good.
Yeah. I don't have Addictive Drums, and I think I want to get into it because, I have been, I'm making more electro and breakbeat influenced stuff, or techno mixed together with those genres. And I like synthesizing a lot of my own sounds, and I like using physical modeling synthesis to create acoustic sounding synthetic drums. And that's one way approach to do it, to do like electro, but with drum sounds that have an acoustic tone to them. But then also like just chopping up crazy breaks that you've made with acoustic samples. Like that's another level of it that I think I want to play around with.
And also, if you're going to go down the 808 route, then maybe just try make it not sound like an 808. Try some effects on it.
Well, always. I mean, one of my favorite tricks with whether it's 808 or other types of synthesizer drums is to, use like kind of feedback ringing delays and pitch shifting and things like that to make the drums kind of. If you think about how the drums in Kraftwerk numbers sound, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And they've got that kind of like, it sounds like the pitch is sort of crumbling and descending on each hit. And you can do that with pitch shifting and granular effects or even just like a delay. If you sweep the delay time on an analog style delay, it kind of goes right. So that's a fun trick.
And also, feedback's like, so if you there was a Carl Finlow track, and it was incredible. This track, it's called Acrobat, and I was like, how did you do these drums? And he was like, it's through an MS-20, so the audio's going into the MS-20, then it's coming back on the desk, but then it's being sent back again through a send, so it's feeding back on itself. But if you catch it just right, it doesn't make this horrendous feedback noise. It just kind of like extends the sounds, you know what I mean? So that's also a nice thing to experiment with, feedback,
I'm looking up that track right now. I'm going to check it out.
Stunning track, yeah.
Nice.
And
I can't believe. Go ahead.
Feedback is worth looking. Feedback's worth exploring. Even
absolutely.
Like feedback your effects units, and sample that.
Definitely.
Really crazy shit.
Yeah, doing that, like, even in your DAW, especially in something where it's easy to route audio from one track to another, like in live, you can put a delay on a return and then have the output of that delay go back into itself.
Yeah.
And then it's like you can create because not all delay plugins have like endless feedback. And anyway, you can create these kind of complex, true feedback chains with any kinds of effects by having a return go back into itself. You have to be careful though, put a limiter on it so you don't blow up your ears when the signal goes plus 12.
I don't think computers like feedback. And then you've got a MIDI feedback as well, haven't you?
Yeah, that's something you want to, that's even more, that's hard to use. But doing audio feedback is good. It's usually something that's easier to do on an analog desk for sure.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. I remember like using, I had Virus, what was it called? The Virus B, I think it was. It was like a little rack mount modular one. It wasn't feedback, but it was like basically, so if it had an arpeggio, it would output the arpeggiator notes. Okay, so you could record them into your MIDI, record the MIDI notes in if you're playing like quite a complex arpeggiator. So then what you do is you record those notes back in, but then you play it back, leaving the arpeggiator on, and it kind of doubles it all up or triples it all up, and it sounds like rain. It's like, that's a
arpeggiating the arpeggiator.
So it's almost like feedback in a way, but it's like so you have your MIDI in and out still connected, record the arpeggiator notes, and then you send them back to be arpeggiated again. Yeah.
I wish you could demonstrate that for us right now. I know it's hard to do a setup. You're a hardware guy. In order to do a stream like this, where you're like doing cool stuff like that, and you'd have to have a camera with an overhead and have audio all routed.
I don't have that box anymore, but it was a really great little box. And because not a lot of those, I think a lot of the modern stuff does, but not a lot of them would do the arpeggio output notes to MIDI.
You can do it. You can do it in the DAW, like right here. I could do that. I can capture those notes and route them to any which way I want, which is fun.
Right. Well, try that. Try that.
Yeah, I'm gonna
record the notes in, but then send it back and leave the arpeggio on and see what happens.
No, I think that's a really good idea.
I think like for me, like a lot of mistake. That was a mistake. It was complete
happy mistakes, happy accidents.
Those are the greatest moments sometimes, and then you just go, how was that? How did that do that? And making things do things they're not meant to,
and then actually on the workflow side of things, you were talking about like playing around with sounds and turning it into audio and the resampling. That's like you've always got a safety net. Like if you don't know how you did something, if you're recording audio while you did it, you already have it. It's already recorded for you to further manipulate and play with. And you know, you might, if you're not recording at the time and you make that cool sound and you're like, oh, that's amazing. And then you can't do it again.
Yeah.
Because you don't understand how it happened.
Yeah.
So
but I love those moments, you know. It's like maybe you'll turn a machine on and it goes doink.
Even that could be cool. I've done that.
You know, let's sample that. You know.
Nice.
I really like that.
I should congratulate our winner of the giveaway. Sorry to interrupt the conversation. We're almost at the end, but I think we can go over a few minutes because this is nice.
Okay.
But congratulations to Sean Martin. You have won Isotopes Nectar. We'll be getting in touch with you about that. And like I always say, if you're new to this game and you're learning how to make music and, you know, make electronic music and do production and getting into synthesis and sound design, learning how to use Ableton Live, whatever it is, that's what we're here to do. 343 TV is brought to you by 343 Labs, which is a music production school. You can get all our info down here in the description below. And of course, if you like what we're doing, give us a nice reaction, subscribe to us, get the alerts when we have new streams coming up. And we have our Discord community that we've been building. There's a link for that in the description here on YouTube as well. Just for those of you who may be out there on Twitch or other platforms, if you're looking for our info, come to YouTube. That's mainly where the action is. And that's where the party is in the chat here, which is a lot going on today. I want to check in with that really quickly.
343 in the 212.
And in whatever the zip code or the area code is for Berlin, because we have our school in Berlin too.
Cool.
Live Society, Daniel Blake says, Live Society says, congrats, Sean. Daniel Blake says, Radio Man is my feckin' hero. You are a hero, Keith.
Oh,
to a lot of us.
So nice, isn't it? And that
really nice.
It's Phil Sync24. Shouts to you.
Yes,
shouts to
he's
everyone
here.
who came in today.
Seriously,
thank you very much for tuning in. You know what? I could go on for a lot longer.
No, we don't have to rush. I mean,
yeah.
Who else is in here? Oliver Cap is a name that I know. Welcome. And Kim Cosmic is a friend of Serotonin.
Hey Kim, how you doing?
So we got friends around. Really great.
Nice.
And we're starting to say thanks to everybody. We're not quite done yet. I want to play one more piece of music, which is not Keith.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorites. Did you do the vocal on this, John?
Yeah. So you and also, Phil Sync24 have both expressed how this was a favorite of yours, and I really appreciate that because this is one of my personal favorite electro tracks that I've done.
Stunning track.
Thanks, man. And not to put you too much on the spot, but we've been trying to get a remixed package of some classic Serotonin stuff together for a little while now, and I hope that you will be willing to do one. Phil's in for one, so there's a Sync24 remix coming. Orson's done one from what's his label called again? I'm sorry, I think
it's called Orson Records.
Oh, it's his name.
It's called,
And he's Transparent Sound. He's been making really great electro since the 90s as well. So
the vocals on this insane.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I used to play around with doing vocals more. I haven't done that much lately.
Do you remember how you did it?
Yeah, it's an Alesis Q2 multi-effects processor, and it had a really good ring modulator in it.
Right.
And it's a digital effects processor, so it's got, back in the 90s, digital effects were like harsh and sharp, right? So it really has this like edge to it, and I can get close to it with, again, I'm in the box. Like I could use an Ableton Live effect to do a ring mod, or other plugins to do a ring mod.
Yeah.
I kind of, for the remix version, I redid the vocal and did the same type of effect on it. It's close enough, especially in the context of a remix. But I really regret not having tracked this vocal on a separate track. This was the stereo mix, and then I overdubbed onto another stereo mix. Because it was like straight, the instrumental was straight to DAT, and then I played back to DAT, and I did the vocal in real time back to another machine. So
I've got a few of those regrets when I could try and find tracks and go like, oh no, you haven't got that.
Exactly. Wouldn't
But
it
you
would
know,
have been
like
so
something
good.
about like freakiness in electro, like vocals, which I've always loved. You know, not just a standard like vocoder. If it's something weird and it's like
Sure.
a bit trippy, and I've always loved that. You know.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
that's what
something about
happened with the
electro.
ring mod, because like the ring mods, it's making that high frequency kind of Dalek, like bubbly alien
Yeah.
tone on top, but then it's also creating low frequency sidebands. It's hard to hear with the drums and the bass playing, but
Yeah.
there's these deep low frequencies underneath. You can kind of catch them in good headphones as well,
Yeah.
and so it sounds bigger.
And those little ravey stabs, they're like little like Juno.
It's actually
what was the
Nordlead,
Juno?
like
Is
the
it?
old, the
Wow,
first
wow,
Nordlead.
wow, wow, wow.
Yeah,
They're like little Juno. What was the Juno that did all the rave stuff? Not the one.
Juno 2, Juno 1.
Did the Mentasm sound?
Yeah, it was the Juno 1 and Juno 2 were the same thing, but one was more expensive and had velocity sensitivity. And then there's I had the MKS50, which is the rack mount version of the Juno 2.
Alpha Juno. No, it was the Alpha Juno.
Alpha Juno, right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a synth I've kept around.
Yeah,
sure.
but those sounds are similar. They're really good.
Yeah, it is got a little bit of that ravey, detuned, Mentasm-ish
Yeah.
tone to it.
But at the time, there wasn't really like a lot of this ravey stuff going on, you know, in terms of like electro sounds and rave. But I think it's a really good mixture, you know.
Definitely. Cool.
Something we were talking about before the show, you know, like how there's a lot of electro that's, you know, there's a lot of it that sounds quite linear still, you know what I mean? So for
True.
me, I like to hear something after listening to it for, 40 years or something. You know what I mean?
We want some new sounds. We want some variation. We want some new directions. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
I still love, like, there's kind of purist electro that's kind of carrying the torch, and it's like, yes, electro, exclamation point, and it's super futuristic and cold, and you know, that's great. When it's great, it's great. But I also want change and growth and new sounds and new combinations of styles. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Let's
Cool.
push it. Bring the funk back.
Oh, definitely. Always, you know, even if you're making some cold, dark, crazy stuff, like experimental.
Well, you know what?
Just
Like,
have a funk element in it, you know?
It's too easy to make heavy sounding stuff. It's too easy, and we can all do that. You know what I mean? It's about the funk for me. It's about the groove.
Some subtlety to the groove. You know, there was someone on the Discord channel that, you know, we have a feedback channel. You can post your tracks and get some feedback, and he was doing some really cool, like, IDM sort of, you know, kind of very syncopated, layered percussion with nice ambient sounds and drones in the background, and it was really good overall, but it was missing the subtlety in the rhythm. Like, all the drum hits were like the same volume, you know. Just using velocity to have louder and softer would make a huge difference.
Well,
and then
I
you can
think
go the further step with, like, you know, the drum sounds can change. It doesn't have to be exactly the same tone all the time. There could be filtering going on, there could be effects changing, and that does so much.
I think I might be a bit guilty of doing that velocity thing as well. Like, you want the drums to punch, you know what I mean? But
well, yeah, you want it. Sometimes you want them all to be hitting, like, full on. And if you can go the other way, if you go too far with everything's floating up and down all the time, it can lose power. So yeah, there's a boundary there to be careful about. Yeah. Anyway, Keith,
that's like when you put an accent on the 808 or something, it's like too loud, and you know, you're getting that balance just right. You know. But
it's
listen,
true.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks to everyone for tuning in.
I'm really glad to have you on here successfully. No interruptions. We've had a great, you know, chat here. A lot of friends saying hello, and I would love to have you back in the future. Maybe someday, somehow, we can set up a more interactive thing. You could show us something, or, you know, I've even had people on, like, even if you're just hanging out behind me here, like, looking on while I'm making a beat, that's fun too. Cause, like, that kind of, you know, how would you do it? Like, you know, if I were, like, to start working on an electro thing and you had an idea, we could just talk about, you know, that can be fun to way to move forward.
I'll give you a little blast of mine. I've got on the go.
Oh, you got some music?
Yeah.
Nice.
You hear that?
It's a little chopped up because of the Zoom audio quality, but I hear the beat a little bit. That's the hard part. That's what Phil and I had to work out. He had his Zoom set up, and he had his audio going through an audio movers, which is sending fairly low latency, high quality audio, and we had that routed in separately. So we could set that kind of thing up for another time.
That's come through the mic, but we'll set that up.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to have you back. And we're just winding down now. Thanks to everybody. This is the last week of the current season for 343 TV. We're going to take a break. Next week's pretty much like a holiday. We've got Easter coming up. And we're going to have a brand new updated schedule happening for the next season. So keep an eye out for that. We're definitely going to be, hitting social media with information on what's happening. I'm continuing on Saturdays. I have a lot of guests lined up. And I have some very nice guests lined up for next time I come back. So I think, I have one more show before the break, I think is how it's going to work out. So thanks again, Keith. Thanks to everyone in the chat for being here. Congratulations to our winner. We'll be in touch if we haven't been already. And come back on Monday for tips and tricks. And adios.
Yes.